we might as well just get going. Lesser crowd I'm going to blame the weather from last week, 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to blame the weather.
I would blame your featured guest. That's who I would blame.
No way.
I blame the moderator.
I would definitely blame the moderator. But we'll get started. I want to thank all you guys for coming. It's really cool for all you guys to take some time out of your Friday night to spend some time with us. And our guest this week is Denny Krahe. Denny, I've known Denny for about 2 years. He runs the Diz Runs podcast, the second best running podcast out there. He's a running coach. He also wrote a book. What's the book title again, Denny? I forgot. It's on my shelf. I forgot.
It's Be Ready on Race Day.
Be Ready on Race Day. It's got a lot of good stuff in there. Some stuff about heart rate training. A lot of people are asking a lot of questions about heart rate training. And Denny is sort of the expert about that. I defer all questions to him when it comes to heart rate training. I will introduce him and just kind of let him give us a little bit of a background on himself. Denny, thanks for coming. Thanks for spending time with us tonight.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Great. Why don't you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and anything I missed in there?
Yeah. So, I guess my background, I guess I still am technically, even though I'm not practicing, I'm an athletic trainer by trade. So I went to college to study sports medicine, to work with, the dream was to work with NHL, work with the NHL team, work with keeping their athletes alive and, mouthful of teeth and bodies pieced together and all that kind of good stuff. But I made the tactical mistake of moving from Michigan to Florida for college. So needless to say, the hockey exposure in Florida wasn't quite as abundant as it could have been had I stayed in the Great North to go to school. But that was the original plan. Got out of undergrad, worked with the Detroit Tigers for a bit. I worked with them. I interned with them. So I worked with them during spring training 1 year, and kind of had planned to go the baseball route, which then one thing kind of led to another, miscommunication. Ended up going to grad school instead of going into pro baseball. Ended up at Middle Tennessee State University working with the track and cross country team, which is where I kind of got into running. To that point, running was kind of one of those necessary evils that, it was exercise. It was never enjoyable, but at least in college, it was something to keep the late night pizza, the late night beer, weight from creeping up too much. Was go for a run once in a while before going out to the bar, things like that. But then working in grad school, working with the track and cross country team, sitting at the track, literally 4 or 5 hours a day. At least I would get so bored that it was just like hell. Like I'm just gonna run a couple laps, like do something to kind of pass the time a little bit. And little by little, running kind of came from something that I didn't much care to do, to something that I kind of enjoyed to do, to something that I really enjoyed to do, to where we are today, where it's what I do for fun. It's what I do for work. It's a big chunk of my life. So, like Scott said, I started my podcast, a while back now. It'll be 6 years in July, that I've been doing the show. Just talking to, literally runners from people that have just started to people that have been in the Olympics and everywhere, in between. As that has kind of grown a bit, then, I started putting some of that athletic training, sports medicine, exercise science background into use, started coaching folks, eventually wrote the book, yada, yada, yada. Really kind of got into heart rate training in the last couple 3 years. I don't know. What else am I missing? I guess, it's one of those, how far into depth do you go when you say, give me a quick background, and 10 minutes later, the guy's still talking. So, that's, I guess, the Cliff's Notes of kind of how I got into running and how I got to where we are today.
Well, it's
usually the yada, yada, yada is the best part.
Right? We doubled our audience, I think, since you started.
Yes.
I want to welcome everyone else who just joined. Thanks for coming. Elizabeth Bain, I see you. I see your cat. That's great. It's nice to see all you guys. Thank you all for coming. I know a lot of you guys are on mute. You can unmute yourself if you have something to say, or if you have a question you want to ask, or you can use the chat feature. If you just add the chat feature and you want to just throw something in there, we can just stop and discuss that at when I see someone ask a question. Denny, we did get a few questions in from the email, so I want to kind of hit that first before we kind of open it up to everybody. So the first question I would bring to you that I got on email was, with all the COVID stuff going on and all that, as a coach, how are you keeping your athletes motivated? I know a lot of us are kind of dealing with, sort of a little added depression, anxiety, kind of everything going on. How are you keeping everybody motivated, going out and getting their work done with everything that's going on?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And it's interesting because at least, the whatever I've got 25 or 27, something like that, athletes that I'm working with currently, it like runs the gamut from those that are like, whatever, I don't run races that often anyway. So like, I really enjoy running. I like the process. So those folks, obviously it's not too difficult. Like they keep on keeping on. And then there's the ones that are on the complete other end where it is like, there's no races and, depending on where you live, it's more important to really stay locked in as opposed to if you're out in the middle. Some of the folks are out in the middle of the country where they see more cows than they see people on a day-to-day basis anyway. Like they can just get out and still run, and it's not as big of a deal as far as the social distancing stuff. So it's tough, but I think that kind of the big thing, at least for right now, at least for whatever it is it the next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, like if you're really struggling because of the lack of races, because of kind of the anxiety of what might happen, whether it's work stuff, family stuff, whatever. There's everything. I feel like every avenue of life right now is ramped up on the stress side of things. It's the thing for me at least, and the thing that I try to communicate with folks is to find something to latch onto that's as close to normal as possible. And for a lot of us that are runners, that's our running. So even if you're not able to train as much as normal as you normally would, if you're obviously if you don't have a race that you're building to, maybe you're not doing the 18 milers, the 20 milers, things like that you might be building up to if you had a spring marathon or something like that. Just trying to keep some sense of normalcy, I think is huge. So, maybe it's still running the same number of days per week, but shorter, or maybe it's 3 days instead of 5 or whatever it is, but just having, to me at least, like I'm a creature of habit. Like I need my routine. And when my routine gets off, like everything else goes with it. So it's like, just keep on keeping on. And it sometimes that sounds easy to say and like hard to do. And I get that. But just, as much as you can, taking it one day, like I said, maybe it's just running literally around the block, getting 1 mile in, but it's one thing that's sort of normal. And then if tomorrow is also a normally a running day, you get that 1 mile in as well. It hopefully can be that thing that kind of breaks up the spiral. So if you're really struggling and things just kind of keep snowballing in the downward direction, if you can get a little bit of that normalcy back in, a little bit of that running back in, that can start to break the cycle a little bit where now, maybe you're able to get outside for your run. So you're getting some sunshine, you're getting some fresh air, you're getting out of the house for 20 minutes, which that could be could sometimes be the best 20 minutes of the day right now, just getting out of the house. So, that kind of starts the spiral, hopefully going back in the right direction where you're feeling a little bit better. You're feeling a little bit, peppier. The stress is down just a little bit, which then maybe leads to eating a little bit better or sleeping a little bit better or doing some body weight exercises, doing some yoga, doing something like that in the house, which then starts to hopefully keep things spiraling in the other direction. But, kind of the short answer for the question, I think is just using running for that thing that is kind of still a piece of normal, as much as you can. And hopefully using that as that base to build some type of positive routine, to just kind of keep things moving in the right direction as much as possible. It may not work for everybody, but I feel like that kind of is a step that's worked for a lot of folks that I've talked to.
Well, let me open it up to everybody. If does anyone have any comments in terms of anything that special that you guys have been doing to to sort of stay on track, to stay motivated when it's really hard, obviously really hard to do that this day and age. If any of you guys have any questions or anything you want to add to that, love to hear it.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
So I'm just the opposite, I feel. Since this whole thing has happened, I am running a ton more than I would normally be. Like well over 100 miles in the last couple of months. So I feel like I'm doing just the opposite, but I'm wondering if that's going to do me any harm.
It can, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So it's kind of one of those, lots of variables at play here, but, and it can be a case where if some is good, more is better. But the thing that I've been trying to communicate a little bit more recently is to remember that stress is stress to your body. Like your body doesn't know the difference between quote unquote good stress and bad stress. So, if you're feeling stressed because of all of the things, I mean, we don't need to, there's a laundry list of things that everybody's feeling stressed about right now, right? We don't have to go down the list, but you're feeling stressed about all, just every aspect of life right now. And then you're going out and you're hammering miles and you're hitting the hills and you're increasing your volume by, 200, 300% of what you normally would. Like, even though that exercise, like, helps you feel like, it helps. I mean, it's the endorphins. It feels good. But if you're pushing too far beyond what your body is kind of fairly well able to handle, you are adding stress to the mix. Like you can't, or you don't want to overlook that. Even though you're feeling better, you're still adding stress to the soup. And if that level, it's not like there's a easily defined level, but once you go too far on the stress buildup in your body, that's when things start to happen. Of course, that's when
and then you start feeling crappy.
Yeah, exactly.
You have like a crappy week. All
right. Right. So it's kind of like finding that balance right now where maybe you have a bit more time to run a bit more, and that's okay if you're not pushing too much as far as keeping maybe a decent chunk of those miles at a pretty easy effort, not just hammering everything hard. Then you can probably get away with it a little bit more. Maybe you're walking a bit more in addition to some of the running, so you might have more time on your feet, but they're not all stressful miles, which can be, then you're talking about things going in the right direction because you're getting out, you're getting the fresh air, you're getting easy movement, but it's not really taxing your body very much. So it's kind of, running a ton right now. It can be okay if you're doing it strategically, if you're doing it kind of carefully, but if you're just kind of willy-nilly going out there and just hammering, definitely there's people that are getting themselves in trouble right now, developing stress fractures, developing other types of overuse injuries because they're just going crazy right now trying to use the running to counterbalance all the other stress, but overlooking the fact or not even realizing it maybe that there's all the stresses of all this extra running is causing a problem too. And then you get yourself in a situation where now you're stressed and you're injured so you can't run, and then that's not a situation that anybody ever wants to be in if they can avoid it.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me ask you this, Denny, as well. I know, so I talk to a lot of people who obviously are runners, and, a lot of people kind of like just go online and they see that Hal Higdon plan, and it's like it's like a box with a number, run 3 miles today, 5 miles today. Yep. You know what I mean? And they don't mix in things like intervals or other types of hills or other types of or they just run a path. And if there's hills, there's hills. They don't. How much running when you prescribe something for a client, and so say even in Katie's situation where she goes out, she's finding herself running every single day and doing a lot of miles. How much of that would you say should be done sort of like with a different focus, like as opposed to just go out and run 5 miles, do some speed intervals, do some hills, things of that nature. What would you say for that?
So you're kind of teeing me up being the heart rate kind of guy here, but not that you need to be following heart rate, like to the number all of the time, but I'm really pretty firm in my belief that if you're gonna like running hard is okay, doing repeats, doing hills, tempo, like whatever, doing hard workouts, like that's cool, but be intentional about them. So, if you're just looking at a plan, if it's just got numbers on it and it's not telling you to be doing something that's quote unquote a proper, like a hard workout where it's just 5 miles or whatever, I would default to making them, easy miles. Like that's pretty much the standard on most of my athletes, like their day-to-day runs. Like, we have the workouts that are mixed in, but like most of the time it's run easy. And so sometimes that's people that are pretty, dialed in with their heart rate and they have their number and they want to stay below it. Sometimes it's making sure it's conversational. It's feeling like you're not working too hard, you're not huffing and puffing, you can carry on a conversation, things like that. But those easier miles are those miles that, that don't contribute as much stress to the equation. They're the miles that don't beat your body up nearly as much. They don't take as long to recover from. And what happens a lot of times, if you're not somewhat intentional about running easy, you kind of get in the gray zone. So it might not be like a hard repeat type of pace. It might not be tempo type of pace or even race pace, but it's also not what your body would class as easy. It might feel comfortable to you, but it's a lot of times when people kind of get into heart rate training to begin with, they're kind of shocked at like how much slower they have to run to keep their heart rate where the heart rate zones are telling them that they should try to be. And there's a lot of times that I get some pushback or some real like serious questions about like, how is this going to make me any faster if I'm running, if I have to run 2 minutes per mile slower to stay in my heart rate zone, or a minute per mile slower, whatever the case might be. But that just kind of says that maybe your base isn't as strong as you think it is. So you slow down, you build the base, and then it's easier to build up above it. But again, talking to a podcast, you asked me one question, I'm going to take the long way around to get to the answer. Like when you're looking at a plan, you get one of those Higdon plans, you get something from online, or you read a book or whatever. I would encourage you to default to easy unless it's a specific workout that has specific pace targets, or it's hills or something like that. Because more often than not, people do too much higher intensity or moderate intensity stuff and not enough easy stuff, which builds that base. So if you default to easy, you're going to reduce your risk of injury more than likely anyway. And you're probably going to be building that base, which is endurance athletes, which, anything longer than like 800 meters is technically an endurance race anyway. So, I think we all kind of fall into that category. The more you build that base of fitness by training slower, running at easy levels, the more that benefits you at the later stages of the race, where you're not struggling to hold on to the pace at the last, 5K, 10K, or whatever the last, chunk of your race might be.
So, obviously we mentioned heart rate training, and that was sort of a big intro into what we're going to talk about tonight. So, from a broad perspective, I know, a lot of people here get involved with heart rate training and they train specifically with heart rate training. But some of the people here may not know exactly what we're talking about when it comes to heart rate training. Can you give us sort of an overview in terms of what you need to do, how you need to monitor yourself, and things of that nature when it comes to how to get started, or even just the general theory of what heart training is?
So heart rate training, at the simplest term, I think, would be to use your heart rate, which is kind of, the feedback of how hard your body is working. Of course, the harder you're working, the higher your heart rate's going to be. Using that to determine kind of what pace you're running or what effort level you're doing your training at. So, an easy run, you'd want to keep your heart rate at a kind of the lower side of that window, versus the harder stuff. Of course, like if you're going to go hard, if you're going to do a repeat or you're going to do a tempo run, like you're going to be pushing hard. So your heart rate's going to be a bit higher. So instead of maybe setting pace goals, instead of saying you're trying to run, 3 miles at 10-minute pace or whatever, you might say you're running 3 miles at 145 beats per minute or less. And so, it might be 10-minute pace some days, it might be 9:30 some days, it might be 11-minute pace some days. It just depends on how well you're recovered, stress levels, how your body is feeling just in general. And you use that to determine kind of how hard you're working in training, as opposed to sticking to a strict, or maybe not even strict, but sticking to the actual time, your actual pace per mile. I don't disregard it, but I don't focus on that. Like I'll keep an eye on what it is, but I'm more concerned with what my heart rate is and making sure my heart rate stays at the level I want it to be for the workouts that I'm doing.
Gotcha. I know a few people that are on the call, actually, they do train that way. They train with heart rate training. One of them I know, Mike Romans. Hold on. And I know, Mike, you submitted a couple questions for us. Mm-hmm. You want to ask them, or you want me to ask them?
No, I can go ahead. When you talk about, and it was funny that you use the numbers that you used, because that's literally exactly the cycle that I've went through. You know, I'm doing a lot of heart rate training and I've seen benefits. You know, I was one of those people that was skeptic at first, but you know, so after a while, once it finally got, you know, what I consider warmer out, I was running. You know, I keep my high zone 2 right now. You know, I'm approaching 40, so I keep my high zone 2 about 140 beats a minute. So you know, and I was able to keep that at about a 9.5 minute pace. And I was pretty excited about that.
Hold on one
Sorry,
second, for it. We're trying to.
we're trying to mute Sandy, but I
You there?
can't.
We can't mute her.
That is so weird.
Well, let us mute her.
I'm gonna try to mute all, and then
Unmute. Can we do that? No.
yeah.
No. We'll figure it out.
She has like voodoo on us. Don't mute me. How about mute all? How about mute all, and
It
then
doesn't say mute all. There isn't a mute
me.
all.
Try this one.
Nope.
Oh, I forgot this touch screen.
Yeah, don't touch anything.
All right.
All right, I think we're kind of quieted
seems
down. All right,
quiet.
go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. Continue.
Okay. No, you're good. You're good. But you know, the last couple of days, you know, we kind of had a cold spell come through here. Ironically, right when we started the ordinary marathon, it got like in the, you know, before I was running in, you know, 50 to 55 degree weather, which I consider decently warm. And now I'm running in 25 to 30 degree weather in, you know, earlier in the mornings, and my pace went down dramatically. Like, I think the one day I was really frustrated because it went to like 10:15 and then it went to like 11. And so, I mean, does cold weather, can that affect heart rate as much, or is it that I just need, I mean, like you talked that maybe my base isn't built up as much as I thought it was. And that could be, but I really feel like I've been heart rate training since about January. So I feel like I should have a pretty solid base at it right now. And I've seen, you know, definite improvements. I mean, before, when I did it, I was one of those people that are like, how in the world is this going to make me faster? Because I'm literally, you know, almost like I'm walking at times. And I didn't, like, I didn't feel like I was walking. And I don't know, it could be something as simple as my watch was off, I guess. But like it was really frustrating. It was really, you know, and like I had said, you know, on the group, it was terrible. It was like, so what are some things that, you know, you talked about, you mentioned a few of them, just how you're feeling, stress level. I mean, I'm a teacher, distance teaching right now. I don't know how stress would even come into play at all, but you know, it's that and having 4 kids. I mean, I'm not stressed at all. But, so I know that, I mean, if that can have an effect, that I mean, definitely makes a lot of sense. But like, what are some factors? Does the cold weather, can that affect heart rate that much?
Yeah. So there's definitely lots of things that can impact it. You know, and yeah, speaking as a teacher, my wife's a teacher, so I'm seeing the stress on that side of things. And we have one child, and there's extra stress from one child being at home, trying to work, trying to teach kindergarten every day. Couldn't imagine multiplying that by 4. So yeah, there's some stress there. That's going to be impacting things. You know, when it comes to weather, absolutely that can play a factor. Typically, you're going to see, you know, the hotter it gets, you're going to have to slow down because your body's working harder to cool itself. You know, when you're getting into hotter temperatures, things like that. But I definitely notice, and you know, this is where I even laugh at myself because, like I said earlier, I'm from Michigan. I live in Florida now, so like, you know, I understand that our cold here is not even remotely cold. But I even noticed that on the days, you know, down here when we do have a day that's you know, when I'm out in the morning and it's 47 degrees or it's 52 degrees, but like it takes a little while for things to kind of like level off. And I do think, and this is me just thinking, there's no like research I've done on this. I've seen no like studies or anything, but I feel like it takes me until I get going enough that like I crack just that little bit of a sweat that like all of a sudden that's when my heart rate like snaps into where it's supposed to be. So I think there's some like dry skin or the cold skin or something like that kind of impacts the accuracy of the readings a bit. versus once I kind of get going just a little bit, like give me a half a mile, give me 4 or 5 minutes out there. And I'm like, it's bouncing all over the place. And then all of a sudden, like I stop for the dog to use the bathroom and then I start going again. It's just like, boom, it finds its spot. So there could be something going on with the cold, where it's just like the connectivity of, or the conductivity of your skin could be a little bit off. Excuse me. If you're using, the heart rate on the watch versus the strap, that can be a huge variable as well. The heart rate strap is way more accurate.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Okay. So that's probably should have started there, because that's like the first place where if you're seeing things going wild day to day and you're using the wrist, like that's like those can have a huge variance margin of error. But I use the strap too, and again, like that's where I said, like I feel like I notice it on the days when it's a little bit cooler, where it just takes a little while. And I would imagine, again, our cold is nowhere near your cold, but I would imagine that the colder it gets, just that connectivity could be a little bit off. So you might try putting like a little, just put a little bit of water on your strap or on your chest before you put the strap on. That can help it a little bit. But honestly, if I heard your numbers correctly, you're talking, 45 seconds to a minute difference of being slower. I wouldn't be shocked if that's a lot more of the stress, a lot more of just the situation of the routine being off, maybe not sleeping as well, like all of those kind of factors that are just gonna be at play, that just kind of starts your baseline heart rate a little bit higher. And so then you start running. And so instead of it settling in at 142, it's getting up to 149 or 150. So you're like, well, damn, I got to slow down a little bit to get it back underneath that 144, 145 mark. And then that's where you see your pace climb up. So I would imagine that that's probably the biggest factor. And then the other thing to keep in mind is, kind of like the stock market, kind of like a lot of things, like we're looking at overall trends more than we're looking at and worrying about day to day. So you might have a week or two, especially right now, or especially even in the last 2 months with all the stuff that's been going on, where it kind of looks like you're not trending in the right direction anymore. But if you zoom out far enough, you're like, well, shoot, in the last 6 months, like I'm definitely moving in the right direction. I've kind of flatlined a little bit, and you give it another 3 or 4 months, you get to the end of the school year, kind of get a chance to breathe a little bit through the summer months, and you'll probably see things start to go back in the right direction, where you're getting back into the back to where you want to be. You're back to 9:30, you're back to 9:15 on some good days, maybe even 9 flat on some good days. Then you'll have some days again where you sleep a little bit funky, or you eat a little bit later than normal, or all those different factors that can impact recovery and your heart rate, and then that throws it off for a day here and there. But with heart rate training, the one of the biggest things I think is just like recognizing that there's going to be more variance day to day than you want it to be, or there can be more variance day to day, and just keep the big picture in mind, and if I hate to say it this way, but if you've only been doing it since January, like you're in that spot where you've gotten some gain for sure, but like you're still in the new-ish phase where you're going to have a bit more variance, where you get to 8 months, 12 months, 16 months of this. And that's where things will really be a lot steadier than they are still at this point.
All right. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. And no, because at first I thought, well, maybe it went up so much because I took my pre-workout right before I went to run. So I thought, okay,
that can be a factor too, for sure.
But then the next morning I didn't take my pre-workout at all. And it was even worse. Like, it was even worse. My pace was even worse. So I'm like, well, that isn't it. And running without my pre-workout sucked. So I'm not going to do that anymore. But, especially when I'm doing it at 5 a.m.
Right.
But, and that's, that too. It's like, okay, so I'm doing my workouts fasted. Like, that can have an effect. So I suppose there's a lot of different factors that play into it. But, it makes me, as much as I thought I had my base, it makes me feel better to know that, okay, maybe I don't have as strong of a base as I thought I did, and I just need to keep with it because, like I said, I have seen a lot of success with it despite my own skepticism with it, because I'm like, how in the heck am I going to get faster running 11-minute miles? And then sure enough, I did, the virtual Ironman and PR'd my 10K, and I'm like, okay, this is for real. Yeah. Like this is for real. And, cross your fingers, I've got a race that is, that's scheduled to be on July 11th. And that, Scott, if it's okay if I ask one more kind of
Yeah, go ahead.
short question. When you're doing that heart rate training and then it comes to race time, like now I've got, and it's just a 10K, but at the same time, like it's, I've been training for longer distances than that. So usually that's what using the heart rate training. Now I've got some bike races that I'm doing that, so I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a focus off running and doing more biking. But like, how do I know, like, what should I look at as far as, okay, this 10K planning for like July 11th is the date that it is. And, my kids are like, okay, Dad, you can go out and win this thing. Because, I wasn't far off last year. And they're like, you can go out and win this. But I'm like, well, I'm not going to win it at 140 beats a minute. Like, so am I best? Like, how do I just, between maybe the end of my bike race, which the last one is June 21st, to the like, do I just work at a little bit more speed training, or do I just continue to stick with kind of the schedule that I'm on, where I usually do, a couple interval trainings a week, and sometimes I just like to go for a run with my kids, like I've shown a couple of on the group side. I just like, if my kids say, hey, Dad, can we go for a run? I'm not going to tell them no. But, it's like, so how should I plan that, like, to where I can, okay, go out and, race time, give it all, and not have to worry that, okay, and not like I am gonna, but not have to worry that my heart rate's going to get to 165, 170.
Your heart rate's probably going to get to 165, 170. That's fine. It's race day, baby. Like, lay it out there and go. If you're gonna race. Don't feel like you need to stick to the heart rate training on race day. Like, right. Heart rate training is training. Racing is racing.
Sure. Do you find that, like, okay, so where I'm at in, like you said, just since January, so do you find that that's going to be somewhat of a hindrance? Like, should I basically, between that end of June to July, basically forego heart rate training and just kind of give myself permission to gut it a little bit more just to get used to that? Or, what do you recommend I do with that?
So this is one of those bits of advice that is really, really hard to accept until you've done it and you've kind of proven to yourself. But what I would do is, after that last bike race and until that race in July, I don't know that I would do any hard stuff. Like, I would do all heart rate. I do all heart rate stuff anyway. I do like one hard workout maybe every 6 weeks or something like that. Like, unless there's a race, like I don't ever really run hard. Not saying you need to be that level of heart rate training. All right. There's you can still do some hard stuff if you want to, but I would certainly, in that 3 week, if I'm doing the math in my head, about 3 weeks, whatever it is, maybe one or two speed workouts would still be okay, but I wouldn't do much more than that. Keep doing, you pick your metaphor, keep pounding the rock, keep doing, keep taking it one day at a time, keep just stick to the plan, whatever metaphor you want to use. But, like, our bodies, and again, this doesn't make sense. And it's everything you've ever learned about, use it or lose it, all those types of things. Like, those are great platitudes, but like, they don't really apply here. Like, your body doesn't forget how to go hard. You might lose a step or two on your 100-yard dash time. Like, you probably will lose a step or two in your 100-yard dash time for doing heart rate training, but you're going to make up 20 steps in your 5K time or whatever, whatever. You're going to gain so much more because you're going to have that endurance. You're going to have that base to where you're not going to fade as much in the last, mile of your 10K than you're going to gain by doing really hard, quarter mile repeats in the lead up to that race. So I would stick with predominantly heart rate training. If you want to get out there and turn your legs over a couple times, that's cool. It's not going to hurt you, but it's not make or break really either. Like the foundation pieces are those easy runs, and that's the difference. And again, it sounds so counterintuitive, but it works. It just, Like, I wish I could do a better way of explaining it.
No,
Like,
it's
there
Can
was
I,
a better way, but it really
perfect. But
didn't
just
Can I
now, all
can I
of y'all
add
heard
something
that
to that?
though. So if I don't win the race in the 11th, we can
it's
blame
my
him.
fault, baby.
So
Katie, I know you had a lot of questions when it came to the heart rate training. So
not even a lot of questions, but I'm gonna add something, Mike, that might make you feel a little bit better. So I've been heart rate training for 2 years now, I think, probably about 2 years. And everything you said is 100% true. Like slow. And I was the same thing. So skeptical, like, how does this work? Whatever. 40 minutes off my marathon time. Like crazy. Like, and that was my first year of heart rate training. So it absolutely 100% works. And all the things that you said, Mike, like what happens on race day, like, am I going to be able to do it? Because I really haven't done this or whatever. And it's amazing. It works, but you got to just trust it. And the nice thing about it that I find too, and I don't have my coach right now, but it gives you the permission to run slowly. And it's so much more enjoyable. It's amazing because I wouldn't go too fast because she'd call me out. She'd be like, hey, you won't go today or whatever. So it makes you run slowly, which you come back from these runs and you actually feel like, oh, I actually feel pretty good. So it works.
no, and like I said, I did. I mean, I don't want to say I wasn't trying, but I can't say I was going out thinking I was going to set a PR in that virtual Ironman. And I mean, I set a PR by like 4 minutes in a 10K, and I'm like, okay, holy cow! Like, either I was really dogging it those days, or this is the real deal. And you know, I'm more convinced that it's the real deal. So hopefully, with a couple more months, and I'm not going to be not running at all, you know, up to these bike races and whatnot. I'll still be running because you know my kid, like I said, my kids are. So I'm never going to. I don't care how sore I am. If my kids, I'll take a wheelchair out there. I've got one in the garage that my buddy set out as a gag gift. I'll take a wheelchair out there if I have to. But you know, it's comforting to know that and to know that I'm on the right track and whatnot. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. Well, actually, I have a client who she doesn't like running slow. She might actually be on this call. She's muted though. Can you get you off of mute, Erin?
Okay.
I'll let you ask the question. I kind of think that you probably want to ask it, but go ahead.
Okay, so my issue is that I've worked really hard on my pace. When I started running 4 years ago, I was a person that did half marathons at a 13:30, 14-minute pace, right? And recently, especially since working with Scott, I've gotten my paces way down into roughly the 10:30, 10:45 area. And he's not like really proud of that at all or anything.
You're working out.
But what I have found is I am less sore when I run faster. Like today I did a speed interval workout. I did 5 times 2 minutes speed paces. And I feel better after this workout than I do on easy runs. And my concern with heart rate training, because he and I have had the conversation about heart rate, because my heart rate tends to stay no matter what between zone 3 and zone 4, sometimes touching zone 5. My concern is that my form sucks when I'm slow. Honestly, I can feel my body just feels weighted. It feels bad. And I'm just a lot more sore. Everything hurts more if I try to pull it back. And pulling my heart rate back where it should be for heart rate training would mean going back to 13:30 paces. And to me, that sounds painful.
I get it. For a lot of folks that are getting into heart rate training, and for me, it was the exact same thing. It just felt awkward to slow down, and it felt, it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel fluid. It felt kind of herky jerky. And so I can totally empathize with feeling like it hurts more to run slow than it does to push the pace a bit. My rebuttal to that and what I've experienced for myself is just like anything that's new that feels a bit clunky or awkward or not natural at first. If you focus on trying to get, to figure it out, basically, to get used to keeping good form and maybe, shorten your stride, but keeping your turnover a bit higher, but with a shorter stride, which is going to keep you slower. It gets more natural. And I'm coming at this now with it being 2.5 years that I've been doing it, and probably for the last, I don't know, at least the last 1.5 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, is the only time. Is like it took. I guess what I'm trying to say, it took about between 6 and 12 months probably to really feel like a natural movement to run at the paces that was required to keep my heart rate below. And so, and I'll even like, before I started heart rate training, I thought an 8:45 was easy pace. Then I got into heart rate training, I was mostly 10:45 to 11:30. And a lot of that was fighting the pace and feeling awkward and not feeling like I could do it. And so I guess my answer is that it's going to be awkward until you do it enough that it kind of, you got to get that muscle memory. You kind of start to figure it out. So it's trying to, keep your shoulders back, keep yourself upright, kind of leaning forward from your ankles, as opposed to bending forward at the waist, so you're still standing upright, you're still leaning forward, and you're running, but instead of the longer strides, almost ridiculous, feel like you're striding so short, like you're basically like shuffling your feet. And then eventually you kind of find that happy medium where you're not overstriding, but you're not shuffling anymore. Like you just kind of like, you start to it starts to feel more natural. And as it starts to feel more natural, it's probably going to stop hurting as much. But I wish that there was some real quick, easy, like, oh, just do this one little thing and it's going to solve all your problems. And it's certainly not. But and this, I'm not much of a woo-woo guy, but this kind of gets into the woo-woo world of like, if you tell yourself it's going to be hurting and you're going to be sore and it's going to be miserable and it's going to suck, then guess what? Running slow is going to be miserable and you're going to be sore and it's going to suck. But if you tell yourself that, hey, I'm going to work on it today and we're going to make a little bit of progress today, you got a chance to make a little progress today. And it still might hurt a little bit. It still might feel a little bit awkward, but like you're moving in the right direction if you can, kind of get that mindset piece turned in the right direction. So, but then now I'm going to contradict everything I just said, because I have an athlete who's kind of probably about the same paces, kind of the same type of thing, always in that kind of zone 4, even no matter how easy she feels like she's running, and like her trying to go slower to get more into that zone 2 area was just like sucking the fun out of running. And so if that's the case, like, I wouldn't tell her. I didn't tell her. I told her not to worry about heart rate anymore. Have fun. Run. We'll worry about the heart rate down the road, or we'll just turn the heart rate off and not worry about it at all and just have fun and run. So, if trying to do the heart rate stuff, if trying to run proper easy is just not fun, then at the end of the day, that's the most important piece to me. And your coach can tell you otherwise, but if you want my free advice, I'll say that fun first, everything else comes second.
I'll open it up to anyone out there who wants to ask anything, or if you have, actually, I just saw Nick. You want to read it?
Sure.
Nick, by the way, hey man, how's it going? I've never actually met you face to face. I think it counts. We've known each other for like 3 years. It's just on social media.
No, I was just wondering, because when you're training by heart rate, how often do you test your speed to see if you're gaining, or if you're I would say a non-believer into the method,
Mm-hmm.
How often do you test to see if you're making progress, if actually it does work, so it kind of helps you, get a positive feedback loop?
That's a great question, Nick. So, you could test it. I think so. Phil Maffetone is kind of like the guru of a lot of the heart rate stuff, and it's the guy that I've learned a lot from as far as books and podcasts and things of that nature. And he says about once a month. I do it probably like 3 times a year. So I don't exactly follow that method, in part because like I have bought in, and like I don't necessarily feel like I feel like I'm in tune enough with my body that I don't need to test it all the time to trust that things are moving in the right direction. But even sometimes, again, this isn't necessarily a perfect way of testing, but if you just look at, you know, like if you pull up my Strava and look at my Strava, like you can see that things are kind of more or less trending in the right direction. So like you kind of get that little bit of feedback when you look at week to week, month to month, things like that. Just anyway, that like, oh yeah, my heart rate basically for all of these runs has been, you know, about 130, 132. And like my paces keep trickling down in the right direction. So like you kind of can get a little bit of feedback there, but I mean, you can do, you know, tests every 4-6 weeks, something like that. Then it just kind of comes down to what test are you running. So like if you're doing, you know, like a time trial, some type of real hard effort, you'll get some feedback there for sure. But that's not really testing the aerobic base as much because you're hammering at a hard level. Now, if you're running away from the bears, all that matters is that you get away from the bear. And as long as that happens, things are working and you're moving in the right direction. But the test that I tend to do is the maximum aerobic functioning test. It's the kind of the heart rate standard test. And so basically what that is, like the quick version, is you have a standard either route that you do, or you go to a track, which makes it real easy because you run on a flat, you know, oval surface, and you go a half mile or a mile or 2 miles, whatever distance you want to do. I have a track in my neighborhood or a path in my neighborhood that I only do my MAF test on. And so the idea is that you try to like really shrink your heart rate window. So normally my heart rate limit that I try to stay under is 141 beats per minute. And honestly, as long as I'm under that, like I don't care. Like I could be running at 120 that day if that feels good. If it's 130, great. 140, great. As long as we're not above 141, I don't care. On the days that I'm doing the test, my window is 138 to 141. And you know, I mean, I might take one side or the other, but I'm adjusting the whole way to try to stay in that 4 beats per or 3 beats per minute window. So then the idea with that is that I'm running this same loop every time I do the test with basically the same heart rate every single time. And then so month to month, or every time I do the test, am I seeing that my time for that test or for that workout is getting faster every time, or getting whatever? Am I moving in the right direction every time? If so, what that's telling me is that my aerobic capacity is improving, because I'm not running at a maximum level. I'm not going all out. I'm staying in that same level of aerobic effort. But my time's getting faster on the same course, on the same distance, on the same hill or no hill or downhill or uphill or whatever. So that's kind of the gold standard of testing for aerobic functioning. Now you can still do, something like a 5K, or you could still do race tests. You could still do, mile time trials, things like that, and still get a pretty good idea of if you're improving. But that's coming outside of just looking at the aerobic base, and also looking at your high level anaerobic fitness as well, which is still important, but it can skew the results a little bit of the heart rate training. But you're still going to see things moving in the right direction more often than not. But again, as I've said several times, ask me a question, I'm going to take the long way to get there. How often can you do that? Can you do the test? I mean, monthly, couple, once every 6 weeks, something like that is enough time to see progress. But frequently enough that hopefully you can kind of stick with it and see string a couple tests together and see like, oh yeah, this is really working, to kind of build that feedback loop, like you said, of like, yeah, it works, so I'm going to stick with it, type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to test, just to keep your heart rate within that very narrow zone there. For those of us, Denny, who are listening and are thinking, all right, I've never really trained with heart rate, or I've never really kind of investigated that. How do you find those zones? We hear a lot of talk of zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We hear, when I talk to clients who don't necessarily have a heart rate monitor, I talk about their breathing and how that relates to what zone that they're in. I know a lot of you guys out there ride on Zwift, and Zwift kind of has a computer, formula that spits out a number for you that shows you where how do you find your zones?
So, there's definitely the different formulas out there as far as what's your maximum heart rate, and then percentages of that. So if you want to stay in the easy zones, it might be like zone 1, zone 2. I can't remember the exact. Is it like 80% or 75%, something like that of your max heart rate? I'm a kind of a sucker for just keep it simple. Like try not to make it more complicated than it needs to be. And so the Maffetone formula, which I on one hand, I hate to use just a standard formula because I'm very anti one size fits all anything. But there is some variables that you can tweak this to customize it a bit more. But his formula, and he's tested it out, like compared it to more detailed formulas, like literally thousands and thousands of times, and it's like always comes within like 1 or 2 beats. So like for me, it's like, well, go with the easy one. If we're talking 1 or 2 beats, it's simply 180 minus your age. So for ease of numbers, if you're 40 years old, you go 180 minus 40 is 140, and that's your aerobic limit. So if you're trying to train at an aerobic heart rate, which is most time you're doing heart rate training, that's kind of what the goal is. You're going to keep your training under keep your heart rate under 140 beats per minute while you're training. Again, unless you're being intentional about a speed workout, then you don't worry about your heart rate. You're pushing the effort. And typically that 140 or that 180 minus your age is going to be like right about at most of the formulas, like zone 2, zone 3 kind of cut off right in that area. So that's kind of what I use just for ease. Like I said, there's some tweaks that you can make. So like if you've been injured, if you've been sick, if you haven't been running very much at all, then you like subtract more off of 180. So you might do 180 minus your age, minus another 5 or minus 10 or whatever. If you've been training for a while, you've got a good solid base of aerobic fitness, you haven't been injured, things like that, then you can get some more beats on the other end of it to 180 minus your age plus 5 or whatever. So you can customize it a little bit more. But again, like I just kind of go with the keep it simple mantra of 180 minus your age, which like, again, if you can do the fancier ones where you go 220 minus your age to find your max and then multiply that by 0.8 to get to 80%. And then lo and behold, it typically ends up like, might be 139 instead of 140, but hey, 140 is a lot easier to remember. So like go with that. But that's how I do it. I know that doesn't answer the question of determining each of the different zones. Like Garmin has the formula that they do when you plug in your age and stuff, and it shows you that it ends up being, like I said, zone 2 is going to be pretty much right about, or the top end of zone 2 is going to be right about 180 minus your age more than likely. So that's just what I go with.
Cool. I want to welcome Bill Costello here. Bill, wave. I think we have like half of the boxes here are people who ran Marine Corps Marathon this past year, including Denny, who I saw out there. But I'll open it up. Did anyone else got anything else that they want to ask from Denny? No? All right. Well, cheers. Thank you guys so much for coming for heart rate, for happy hour heart rate training discussion with Denny Krahe. Bill, it's like I feel like you just got here, and now we're saying about.
But we can stay on. We don't have to talk heart rate.
Well, just let me explain, Scott. So over here, I have laid out my shirt, my bib, and everything for Sunday. I'm going to do what I was going to do on April 26th, the London Marathon. I'm going to do the whole thing on Sunday. The only problem, I can't get people to help me with water stations. I don't like leaving water along the trail or whatever, but so anyway, that's why I'm focusing on running this weekend. But I've been running all along, and I watch everybody's posts. I just am not good. In fact, I tried to take a picture of this on my Strata and put it up to Ordinary Marathoners thing, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. Tonight you'll get that late at night, okay?
Awesome.
Anyway, so Sunday is my big day, and
That's awesome.
Angela, is that your bib from your half marathon?
That's my bib for tomorrow.
All right.
The outfit's not
Awesome.
laid out yet, and I still need to map out my run.
Yeah.
He's running a half marathon tomorrow?
Yep.
Angela's doing a half, and then Bill just like blew everybody up by doing a full Sunday.
well, I saved it for this weekend, Scott.
Awesome. Ordinary Marathon.
Yep.
There you go.
Literally.
Well, I was supposed to be running a 5K tomorrow, but it's this weekend, Victoria Day long weekend, is always the Blue Nose Marathon weekend. Always.
Right. You do that every year too, right?
It's my one race that's postponed. Every other race is canceled or virtual. I have one that's gone virtual. The rest have officially all now been canceled. Or as they say, postponed, but when you postpone it to next year at the exact same time.
So I get to keep your money.
So they're doing a distance run this weekend, and it's for free. And you get your virtual bib and you get a virtual medal. So I foolishly signed up for the half because I didn't do my half. I should have last month. So
that's great. Hey, let me ask you this: going around the horn here, since we only have like about 9 people. When is the earliest race that you guys have that hasn't been canceled? I still have a race in July that hasn't been canceled, but the rumor is that it's going to get canceled. Denny and I were talking before we got on with everybody about like Boston Marathon in September and whether or not that's going to happen. What do you guys have races that are before, say, middle September still that are still going?
nope. My earliest now is November.
Yeah, we've been told that Oregon's not, or at least where I live, we're not having gatherings of more than 25 people until September at the earliest. So nah.
Well, when my September race, my Maritime race weekend, this one, my favorite race, when it got canceled, she had gotten a letter that said there couldn't be sports gatherings for at least 12 months. Is what they've said. So even Blue Nose happening in November, I'm thinking it's going to be iffy because Blue Nose is the biggest race in Atlantic Canada. I mean, you can have 4,000 people running the 5K.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
So I talked to a race director who runs about 30 JB Sports in Connecticut, who runs about 30 events, including the one that Scott and I met at here in Connecticut. And he told me that all the, I forgot the USA, whatever, the association of different directors of these big events are sort of coming out with guidelines to do these starts that are not waves, but more of like, if you show up at 7 o'clock, the race is open, you go. I'm talking 5,000-6,000 people race. If you show up early at 7 o'clock, the road's going to be closed and you go. Now, it doesn't work for everything, but I do know that Boston Marathon is actually experimenting with that. They're probably not going to be able to do it with that type of thing, the way, where they congregate in the buses and all that. So I have a feeling Boston isn't going to make it, but London is experimenting with, but they're all getting together and talking about this. And some of the states have been really open to it and saying, just do something that satisfies the public that we have a plan. And so some of the 5,000 and under races, I think, are going to be fine because of this new guidance that's coming out from the running clubs and all the big guys.
Yeah, it largely depends on where you live. I mean, I know people have been talking about states opening, but where I live, a state is a very big place. Yeah. Like I live in Portland and we're the only city in my state, really, if you look at it that way. There's no reason why, Western Oregon, which is, I've been in counties where there are more cows than people. It's like Wyoming only in Oregon. And there's really no reason why, they shouldn't be able to throw a 5K or a 10K there. Now, do I want one in downtown Portland today? Oh, hell no. But this is the mail, by the way. I don't know if you guys can see this.
That's awesome.
Nice.
I know Erin has a race down in Tulsa, Oklahoma that's still open in July, right?
The Tri is in Arkansas. Missouri. Sorry, it's in Missouri. My bad. But that one is still going off supposedly on July 12th.
Yeah, it's good. I don't know. It feels good that some races are still going on. It's just like a tentative. I don't know. I get a little like ray of sunshine, knowing that somewhat, hopefully everything goes off nice and smoothly. I know, one of the things that Denny and I were talking about earlier was, if they had Ironman Lake Placid or a big race like that, and like half the people got sick, like the lawsuits would like devastate the whole racing community, and it just would be terrible.
How are they going to have Lake Placid if they've already postponed Kona?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think, it's funny. So some of the races, the one the half that I'm doing in early July hasn't been canceled yet.
Really?
Hearing some rumors that, that they're talking about it still, but, it's probably going to get canceled. I don't see how it actually gets to go. I would love it if it did, but I don't think it's going to happen. It's just, I don't know. At some point, I see Boston as the marker. I see Boston as I think that Boston kind of closed down a lot of their public events until right before Boston Marathon's supposed to happen. So I kind of see that as like the marker as, all right, if Boston's going, everyone else is going to go. But
yeah, Boston's a unicorn though. I mean, and I say that, because BCA unicorn, haha, but because their event is scheduled on top of a major holiday weekend. So it's a matter of the density of your population and how many people are coming in from outside, right? So if there were, say, there's a couple of races in Portland that are tiny. They're not really in Portland. They're like in Tigard in a park and there's 100 people or something. If that were to happen, that wouldn't be that big a deal. But if the Portland Marathon were to go, say right now, this weekend, with 20,000 people, 15,000 of them coming in from all around the country, that just doesn't seem like a good idea.
yeah.
Oklahoma is really, really weird because we run with Fleet Feet training programs. Jake's actually a 5K running lead, and I do the pathways. And we are restarting Monday. We're restarting group running Monday.
Wow.
We have a very blue mayor, though, who is not opening the pools, not opening playgrounds indefinitely, but a very red state governor who is opening everything else. So Tulsa is sitting in this really weird pocket of blue with a blue mayor who is keeping everything closed down with a red governor who is opening everything else up. So we're sitting here going, we really don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. But you're also in an area that you're not in a state that's on the high number of cases list, right? You don't have any hot spots near you where there have been maybe not a lot of cases, but a lot of traceable transmissions back to a certain place.
Yes.
So I mean, we're sitting, forget politics, we're sitting in physically very different places because of the circumstances of the virus. Well, so whereas you running on Monday, no problem. Me running on Monday with a group, no.
Yeah, and population density is certainly one of those factors. Tulsa, for its geographic area, is very low population density relative to Portland, which of course, while it's not coastal like Seattle, it's still bounded by the mountains and it's bounded by other physical barriers that keep it relatively population confined, right? Yeah. And so you've got a lot more people in a smaller area, and it's more difficult to control an infection that starts spreading that way.
Well, sure. And the vast majority of Oregon's cases have been in Portland. So this is the epicenter of the state, whereas there have been zero in some of the coastal counties. And, they're like, we don't want you coming to visit yet. We want your money, but stay home.
Stay away from Newport. I love that place.
For Nova Scotia, where I live in, I'm in Lower Sackville, but Lower Sackville is part of the Halifax Regional Municipality. Mm-hmm. And the Halifax region easily has probably 90% of the, mass majority of the cases for Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia, I think we're over 1,100 now cases, but right now the active cases, I think there's less than 20 outside of the nursing homes. And, but practically all of those are in the Halifax area, the Halifax region, that they divided everything into regions. But most of our cases are at the nursing home Northwood. Northwood is the largest nursing home east of Montreal. And they've had all but most of our deaths also have come from that nursing home. And that's where most of the cases are. And there's a lot of the regions, how they divide up the regions that currently have no cases. And they're calling for our premier, they're calling for Steve McNeil to open things in those areas, and he won't, rightfully so, because people will travel there. Just like he says, people will do. They lose it 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago they reopened the trails and the parks, and as of 8 a.m. tomorrow, the beaches are reopened. So some things are slowly starting to reopen. Some stores on their own are starting to reopen because they realize they're losing money. And so on their own, they're starting to reopen, but it's still like Monday, like you're still supposed to be doing the social distancing. Monday when I went for my run, I went in the evening and it was in the teens for the temperature. So it was like shorts and t-shirt weather that should have been a singlet because I ended up rolling the sleeves up because I got so warm. And dodging people left, right, and center to give the social distancing that needed to be done. And it's a nuisance, especially when some people don't move and you're either going up somebody's driveway or you're going out onto the street with your back to traffic.
Yeah. I was running off the road on Wednesday when I went running in order to avoid people on trails and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't run trails. I don't feel safe on them. There's one trail that I do run. It's a paved trail and it's opened and I feel perfectly fine on it. But right now I won't because I do not feel like you could give proper social distancing on it. So I'm staying off it for now.
Well, I'm male and we have no caribou and we have no bear, so.
Well, we have no bears. However, we do have deer. It was 2 years ago. I was actually running. Mind you, I live in a residential area. I saw a deer out on my run in the morning. But if you read about a lady runner being attacked, it's on a trail.
Yeah.
So I stay off them, especially since they've happened on the trails in my that are right by me around First Lake that's close by. They've been at least 2 that I've read about ladies being attacked on those trails. So I don't run them.
Love you all male runners, but just bear it. I'd like you to throw in the back of your mind that you've probably never thought, gee, maybe I shouldn't run a trail alone because I could get attacked.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that out there as something that the female runners deal with every goddamn day.
I'm cognizant of that. I'm not entirely comfortable with her running alone. We've had that discussion, so.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Well, you see, on my personal Facebook page, I don't talk about my running a whole lot because of my mother. But she worries about it. Mind you, I'm 40 years old.
Right.
But she worries about me doing my running. I remember this one morning, I went for an early morning run and I was going to do my loop, but there was this absolutely gorgeous sunrise. Not sunset in the morning, it'd be a sunrise. Gorgeous sunrise. And I just kept going straight so I could go across this bridge and get a good picture of the sunrise. And I posted it on my Facebook and my dad commented on it. And he goes, I'm not showing it to your mother because she would worry.
Nice.
I hear you with that. We actually had a local trail that's pretty open to the public and really heavily trafficked. And someone took a picture of a bear on the trail and sent it around Facebook. So in reality, Bane, there's been a couple times where I've been scared, but I understand, and I feel the same way about Stephanie out there as well.
Well, one of my friends that's a runner that I met him. He was actually one of the coaches when I ran with Team in Training 2 years ago for my marathon. He was out running in area this past week in Shuby Park because they reopened, and he wished he had taken his camera because he had to hurdle over a beaver on the trail and jump over a beaver.
I hear they're nasty. They can be nasty too, right?
They got the big pointy teeth.
Well, Bill,
our issue here is usually homeless.
Yeah.
Homeless people.
Homeless people. That's a problem.
Bill, the Farmington Canal Trail, which is where Bill does that race, it runs on that trail. They had a big bear incident a couple years ago, and I think it was last year. And I ride my bike on that trail all the time. I think it was in Farmington, so a little north of you. But
I'm in Cheshire, just north of New Haven, and there's bears all around now. There never used to be. I lived there for a long time, and there was nothing. But speaking of getting attacked, I'm a little bit of a wimp. I used to always run in the morning, when it was dark and sun was coming up or whatever. But then I started seeing, and I swear it was development of my town. There was different housing developments, and you would see these eyes in the woods. Like something's there. You don't know what it is. So I started running with a little poker for the fireplace. I literally did.
Oh my God.
But anyway, that was when I was a morning person. I can't run before late afternoon.
Well,
although I did today.
I wonder what that does to your heart rate.
That's right.
A few times I run in the morning when it's not fully daylight yet. I don't do it too often because I will run in night dark. I don't have a problem with night dark. I have a problem with morning dark.
Yeah.
And every little sound would scare me. And when I would go across the area, if there was like bushes along the side of the sidewalk, I swear there was always somebody in those bushes about to jump out at me, and I would hear these rustling. It could just be the wind, and I would just start running faster to get past them.
So statistically, you're far more likely to be attacked in the evening at night than you are in the morning.
Statistician, everybody.
Yeah.
Because they're hungrier at night or what?
No, it's because even nocturnal animals, they like to go to bed around sunrise. So they're heading to bed, and animals, including human beings, they don't generally like to wake up early.
Yep.
And so that's why pretty much everything sleeps in those twilight hours of the morning, right? What the military calls dark 30, right? That's why in the military, that's why we make our raids during that period of time, because everybody's tired. Everybody wants to go to bed.
We see that Denise just joined us, and she's out walking at twilight.
Don't get eaten.
Don't get eaten out there by animals.
City Park. All good.
But let me just, I guess, we've been on for a little over an hour, just, I guess, kind of to wrap things up. Sorry, Denise, we're wrapping things up. But does anyone have anything else left for Denny, who's been waiting patiently, I might ask? Does anyone else have anything else for Denny before we let him go?
I'll go ahead if I can. I mean, I have some coaches that can answer a question. I'll take advantage of it.
Good.
I've been on a rest period for 6 months. So I'm wondering, I just started back running with the ordinary marathon. And now I'm wondering, should I shoot to gain back the endurance to go all the way up to, let's say, half marathon without stopping? Or should I start by shooting to gain back the speed where I was at?
So, as we've established, I'm pretty biased towards the heart rate training, which is gonna be more of the endurance component than the top end speed. And like we've kind of touched on in a few of the different tangents or the topics that we've been down. You build the endurance, the speed's going to come. The speed will come back. Your body hasn't forgotten how to run fast, even if you haven't run much in the last 6 weeks. You just don't have, or you've lost a lot of that aerobic capacity to go fast right now. So I would push you towards doing more of the endurance training, running easy, building the base back up. And you're going to gain back a lot of the speed just from that. And then once you have that base in place, then you've got that foundation to do a little bit of speed work on, where you're going to be less likely to be injured from going hard because of it. So then you can, put the finishing touches on getting your speed back once you have some of that endurance in place first.
Scott, do you agree on that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you agree on that?
I do. But I mean, mine would have been, I think Denny's answer was very heart rate centric. Heart rate centric training, but my answer would have been similar, but more like a warning not to overdo it. I think a lot of times we want to be where we were. I'm in that point right now. I mean, if I did my best mile right now, I'd be two minutes off of where it has been in a couple years ago, and I would rather be faster right now, but my brain tells me it's smart to kind of lay off and hold back. I think, your danger, especially coming off an injury or a period of rest over a long period of time, your danger is to try to get it back too fast, too quickly. And it's just a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for, re-injury or just overdoing it way too quickly. So it's just ease back into it. Take your time. If you feel like the need, like you got to go out, maybe you can't run 2 miles. Well, if you feel like you got to be out for an hour, then that's a lot of walking. But get the walking done because it's important. I mean, I tell my clients all the time, well, I don't tell Erin because she won't do it. But, going out to walk is important. I mean, it's about time on your feet. A lot of times, especially if you're talking about endurance events, racing, half marathons, a lot of it's just about time on your feet. Get out. And if you can't do the distance at the pace, walk. you know, and a lot of people don't want to hear that, but you know, that'll help you. It'll help you, you know, progress back to the point that you were. You know, you're not going to snap your finger and get it all back. Unfortunately, you know, it's like the answer that everyone wants to hear, but it's not true. You got to put the work in to do it. I think it will come back faster if you've been there before. You just got to be patient, and it's hard to say because you want to be fast again, but just be patient, put the work in, and hopefully it'll just come back faster, and you'll be where you were, you know, in no time. Which is actually the answer that Denny gave, but longer, more words.
You also went around your little.
It's a podcaster thing. This is how we do things. There's a short answer, and then there's our answer.
No, it's just that before one of my fastest time was just for I think was 7 seconds before, just close to get a 3 miles or a 5K under 25 minutes. So I was 25 minutes 07. You know, it was, you know, those little bits, and I'm like, it's just frustrating, and I'm like chasing that to gain it back, and it's just painful.
Nick, I'm with you. I always tell Scott, I'm like, I get so upset that I'm not the runner I used to be, and it actually discourages me from going out for a run, you know. But
which makes it less likely you'll get back to being the runner you used to be, because now you don't want to run.
Horrible.
Vicious
and now you can't enjoy the runner you are.
I want to set a new personal best on my 5K. I set my personal best on my very first 5K that I ran, which was back in September 2014 at Maritime Race Weekend, and I ran it in 29:44. I've only gone below 30 minutes once since then. So
I'll tell you that coming back from a spinal injury where I had to have surgery to correct that. And yeah, coming back to it, I was in marathon training when that happened.
Wow.
And then I'm out for 4 months before I can even trail again. And when I go back out, I feel fantastic for about a half mile, and then the wheels completely fall off, and I was down the rest of the afternoon. I don't think I hardly moved. Your body when that happens, and you will get it back over time. It's a
I actually have to run and work on it. Yeah, that's the struggle with no races. I struggle to stay motivated.
Yeah, it's tough. It's just, you know, it's about just trying to get back into it. And you know what, Nick? Sometimes you just got to go out there and try to enjoy the run. I don't know. Did we just do
no,
sometimes you just got to try to enjoy the run, and not look at the watch and not look at the. Just kind of get out there every once in a while and just enjoy.
I just can't do that. I work by numbers.
I won't be looking at this thing tomorrow for time. I'll be looking at it for the distance, but not the time.
Since I started running, it was always about the numbers for some reasons. And, you know, I heard a lot of people saying, leave the watch at home, or, you know, those things. And I just can't. It just enjoy the run without a number at the end. It's not enjoyable for some reason.
See, and I'd be like, okay, Nick, I double dog dare you to stop every mile to pet a dog or take a selfie.
Yes, I like it. I like it.
A selfie?
With a dog, preferably after you pet it.
I would only do it if it was cats.
Totally count.
I think this year is the first year I'm doing a selfie for the ordinary marathon. So,
well, you might win a prize if you do.
For the beard.
Here's the trick to selfies: never try to look cool. Go big with the dork, and they'll be great. Like, yeah, Joey's great.
You
but we're like,
watch at home. You just went out on an area that you know. Just go out, leave your watch at home, pick a trail that you know well, and just go.
Yeah, but how long will it take me? I need to know how long.
As long as it takes.
Yeah, I know.
I think that's kind of up to you.
I don't know what happened.
Can you hit the mute button, Denny?
Me?
Yeah, we're just hearing the
for
wind
some
from
reason
you
we
walking.
can't mute you.
And we can't.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I don't know if you got it or not. I don't know. I think we're probably
Trying to figure out where it's at.
But anyway, we're probably winding down here for
Hey, it's motivation to watch you though.
Well, listen, I appreciate all you guys coming.
It is almost 10 o'clock for me, and I do need to still map out my run for tomorrow.
That's right. You got to do that. You got to get some sleep. You got a long one. But I appreciate everyone coming. Denny, thanks so much for coming. Denny, where can we reach you social media wise and all that good stuff?
Well, I am in the Ordinary Marathoners group. So if you ever have a heart rate training question, you can always just, tag me in a post there and I'll be happy to chime in, offer my 2 cents. I'm also pretty much Diz Runs on everything. So DIZRUNS on Twitter, Instagram. We have our own Facebook group too. You're welcome to come hang out there. I know we got a lot of cross pollination between our groups, which is cool. So,
cool.
Come join the party there, or like I said, tag me on anything, and I'll, I can't guarantee that whatever I say is going to really help, but I'll do my best to try to steer you in the right direction and hope it's useful. So, thank you, Scott, for letting me be part of this tonight. It's always fun to just sit around and talk running with a bunch of other runners.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for coming, Diz, and got to have you on the podcast again soon. I think we're overdue.
I mean, yeah, it's about that time. Every however many episodes, just circle back up and see what's new.
All right, awesome. So thanks so much for coming, guys. Cheers. Hope you guys have a good night's sleep and get a good run in tomorrow.
Good luck, Angela, and good luck, Bill, on your races.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck,
Thank you.
Nick, dog picture. We're waiting. Dog picture.
Yes, Nick, dog picture. Yep.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.